Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Scintillating Moments with Viv. It's nice to have you here. So if you're here for the first time, please do remember to click on the subscribe button and subscribe to my channel because here on this podcast, I talk about a lot of relatable things that would make you so happy and you will get a lot of knowledge from what I talk about here. So today I'm going to be giving you another spicy one on health. Now you hear a lot of people talking about pregnancy and taking folic acid when a woman is pregnant. But then let me tell you something that would interest you the most. It's not just enough for a woman to take folic acid when pregnant. It's also important that a woman takes folic acid while trying to conceive. Now I'm going to tell you how this folic acid actually influences your baby's development. Okay. Now, when you take folic acid while the baby is trying to conceive, it has a long role it plays in the development of the brain and the spinal cord. So what happens is that the brain and the spinal cord actually develop from the neural tube, which is a derivative of the ectodermal layer that overlies the notochord. Now, don't bother yourself about notochord, ectodermal layer. Mesodermal layer is a huge one, so I'm just trying to be as simple as possible, okay? But you're going to get the things I'm trying to explain. Now, when you look at the neural tube, just imagine in your head something that is a tube. It's going to have a hollow inside, and then you know what a tube is. So it's going to have a cranial part, that's the part that is superior, and then of course it will have somewhere that is inferior, the one that is below. Okay, just have that picture in your mind. Just look at a tube, a pipe, something. Just imagine that. Okay, so the cranial part, which is the part that is superior, the part that is above, is going to give rise to your brain, and why that of the dorsal part, the inferior part, is going to give rise to the spinal cord. Okay, I'm going to try my best to use very simple terms, like I said earlier, so don't get frightened. Just stay, you would understand every single detail. Okay, so now the part that is above has an opening. That's what we call the cranial neuropole, while the part that is below also have an opening called the caudal neuropole. Now these openings are expected to close at the 25th and 28th day of gestation, respectively. So now there's something that happens when this cranial one and the caudal one doesn't close. When it doesn't close, it gives rise to what we call anencephaly and spina bifida. Have you ever heard of someone giving birth to a child and they tell you that the child's skull was open and there was no brain? You've heard that before, right? Now, some people will say that it's their village people. No, it's not their village people. It's actually the result of folic acid deficiency. Okay. Now, when there's no folic acid, there will be no synthesis of DNA that is responsible for mitosis of the cranial of the cells that will help fill up the cranial neuropole for the cranial neuropole to close. That is exactly what happens. And in anencephaly, which is the absence of the brain, you see the open skull, it's not actually the whole brain that is missing, it's the telencephalic part of the brain that is missing. Okay, now looking at the spinal part, which I call the spinal bifida, I said something that when the caudal part doesn't close, it also gives rise to spinal bifida. Now when you look at spinal bifida and spinal bifida, there are actually three types of spinal bifida. When Okay, let's start with the first type. The first one, which we call the spina bifida occulta, it when it happens, you find out that you give birth to a child that has hairs at a part of the spine, on the spinal vertebrae. There are hairs present at the back, so you just see a hair present at the back, but you don't see an opening. Is an indication that one of the vertebral columns are open. The bone of the vertebral column is open. So what you have to do is that they will have to um, schedule the child for your surgery where they will correct it. Then there's another type what we call the spinal bifida meningocele. In spinal bifida meningocele, you find out that the meninges, which lines is a covering of, we have the covering of the brain, we have the covering of the spinal cord, but now the covering, which is the meninges of the spinal cord, now instead of being just on a straight just running straight down the spinal cord, what it does is that it herniates. it passes through. When you hear anything like hynating, it's just entering something entering where it's not supposed to enter because there is an opening there. So what happens is that the meninges hynate into the opening of the vertebral bone. So that is what happens there. And then it also needs surgery to be corrected. Now the same thing happens with the third one where we have the spina bifida melisis, or we call it the Ras cases. And the third type, you find out that this the neural tube fold doesn't close up, it doesn't elevate to close up, so it's open. When you have a child that you're not just seeing a swelling or hairs at the or hairs at the point in the spinal at the back, that's on the spinal cord, but you're seeing an opening at the back of a child. So in such cases, you see that at that particular point where the caudal neuroprotein close, that the skin that is supposed to be overlying that part is open. Now, in such cases, we also book schedule the child for a surgery, and then a surgery is done to correct it. Now, you can actually discover these um, health problems in a child when the child is still in when the child is still in the stomach, that's as a fetus, or when you've delivered the child. Now in cases where you find out for spinal bifida, it can be corrected through fetal surgery when the child is still in your fetus, or it can be corrected after birth. Okay, but in cases like anencephaly, where the telencephalic part of the brain is totally absent and the skull is absent, there is no correction for it because the child would definitely not survive it. It just takes a few hours before the child is gone. So it's not something the child will live with or you would have your child after. So folic acid is very, 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 very important, not just for DNA synthesis, but it's also very important for methylation of proteins, of lipids also that are very important for DNA for the DNA processing or synthesis. Okay, so it's very, very important that a woman that is pregnant or trying to conceive takes a lot of folic acid rich food. A very good example of folic acid rich diet is avocado. We have your the avocado pear. We also have beans. These two are very rich sources of folic acid. But I've seen people that say they don't like avocado. I don't know why, but they don't just like it. They don't even like beans at all. So I wonder where the rich source of folic acid will come from. But don't worry, you can go for folic acid supplements so that you can it can balance what you are missing out in those rich diets. But the natural sources are always the best. So do well to make sure that you take a lot of folic acid as a woman that is trying to conceive or as a pregnant woman. Okay, so thank you so much for listening. Thank you for staying with me till the end of this podcast. So if this is your first time of being here, just like I said earlier on, please subscribe. And if you just listened to this podcast and you really, really got a lot of knowledge, please do well to send it to someone else to listen to. The person is going to benefit from it. Is it a medical student, someone that just wants to know things, a woman trying to conceive, mothers in general, even fathers, everybody. The podcast is for every single person. So do want to share it with them and get more knowledge. See you next time on my podcast, Scintillating Moments with you. Do have a lovely week and weekend ahead. I love you guys. Mwah. Bye.